The Ukrainian F-16, which was handed over to the people of Ukraine by the government of the Netherlands, has achieved its first aerial victory over a Russian Su-35. This is truly a historic event, a wonderful one. And today is a great day to talk about the details of this operation, which, among others, is being reported today by the German outlet Bild. It is reported that this operation was unique in every sense. This is not just a defeat, a humiliation for the Russian aerospace forces, but a historic victory for a Western fighter jet. As we remember, during the Cold War, in various films made by Western Hollywood directors, all those Top Guns and the like, they dreamed of the day when victories would be won over Soviet, or rather Russian pilots and, of course, their flying machines. And today, one such flying machine was successfully taken down and shot down over enemy territory, which is important to note. Over enemy territory, the enemy aircraft crashed in the Kursk region. The details of this unique operation will be shared a bit later. It has also become known that Israel has supplied Ukraine with Patriot air defense systems. This was reported by none other than the Israeli ambassador to Ukraine, Michael Brodsky, in an interview with Marichka Dovbenko. This information is exclusive. Ukrainian defense forces also managed to destroy 2 Russian aircraft, a MiG-31 and a Su-34 at the Savazlika airfield in the Nizhny Novgorod region. This was the result of a specially coordinated and planned operation. In Chevokseri, Ukrainian drones attacked a factory that produces components for Russian drones. Today, the Russian occupiers carried out a record strike in terms of the number of launched targets, 499, almost 500 targets launched. At the same time, every single missile that was launched was shot down by Ukrainian air defense systems, as was the vast majority of the launch Shaheds. And finally, the Russian Foreign Ministry base Yorselveshas demanded the withdrawal of NATO troops from the territory of Eastern Europe. Let me remind you, all of these countries are already NATO member states. Without this, the Russian Foreign Ministry claims the war in Ukraine will never end. All of these news items, will discuss them further. So the Israeli ambassador to Ukraine, Michael Brodsky, stated that Israel has in fact supplied weapons to Ukraine, despite the official position of the State of Israel always being deliberately and emphatically neutral. In an interview, he said that the Patriot systems, which we once received from the United States, are now in Ukraine. These are Israeli systems that were in service with Israel in the early 90s, and we agreed to transfer them to Ukraine. Unfortunately, this hasn't been talked about very much. But when people say that Israel hasn't helped militarily, that's not true, that's false. It is reported that the ambassador himself complained that in Israel he was repeatedly criticized for showing too much sympathy and providing too much assistance to Ukraine in the war. He also expressed hope that peace could be achieved before the end of his diplomatic mission. Previously, a number of sources circulated this information, though, let's say at the level of unverified rumors, because Israel is indeed supplying Ukraine with various systems, including systems specifically designed to detect Iranian Shaheds using unique technology that is only in service with the IDF. But I will repeat once again, this information has never been officially confirmed. And today, as we can see, we finally know who is who. And in this situation, Israel has truly acted as a genuine and graceful ally of Ukraine, a country that itself has been at war with many of its neighbors for decades. Nevertheless, the people of Israel have extended a helping hand to Ukraine in such a difficult moment. And they didn't just extend a hand, they provided Patriot systems, extremely valuable systems that now form the backbone and core of Ukraine's air defense system, which, by the way, was operating at full capacity today. And once again, I want to repeat my immense gratitude to the people of Israel and personally to Ambassador Michael Brodsky, who I know is making tremendous efforts and is very active, especially in consultations and negotiations with Ukrainian officials from the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other government agencies. This is truly in part his personal achievement as well. Now, regarding the Russian strike, today, yet another anti-record was set, let's call it that. 499 aerial targets were launched, just one short of 500. Of these, 479 were Shahed-type attack drones and decoys, imitation devices called parody. They were launched simultaneously from 5 directions: Primorsko-Akhtarsk, Milerovo, Oryol, Kursk, and Shatalov. The enemy also launched 4 Kh-47M2 Kingzal aeroballistic missiles from the territory of Tambov region, 10 Kh-101 cruise missiles from Saratov region, 3 Kh-22 cruise missiles from the airspace over the Black Sea, and 2 Kh-31P anti-ship missiles from the Black Sea. Next, a Kh-35 cruise missile was launched from the territory of occupied Crimea. In total, Ukrainian air defense shot down 479 out of 20 targets. 277 enemy Shahed UAVs were shot down. 183 were locally lost suppressed by electronic warfare systems. All 10 Kh-101 cruise missiles were shot down, as well as 4 Kinjal aeroballistic missiles, 2 Kh-22 cruise missiles, 2 Kh-31P anti-radar missiles, and a Kh-35 cruise missile. It is reported that air attack weapons struck in 10 locations, and the wreckage of downed targets fell in another 17 locations. This record-breaking attack primarily affected especially the Rivne region, which experienced the largest drone and missile attacks since the beginning of the war. The main target was the city of Dubno. And of course, the Russian Ministry of Defense immediately reported in the Konashenkov style, which has already become a meme. The signature Konashenkov style, stating that a retaliatory strike was carried out in response to the terrorist attacks by the Kiev regime on Russian military airfields. So it turns out that attacking Russian military airfields is considered terrorism, but attacking maternity hospitals, schools, and residential buildings, those are, as Peskov says, strikes on quasi-military targets. Don't get it mixed up. Military airfields in Russia, terrorism, maternity hospitals, quasi-military targets. This is important for understanding the twisted logic of the Russian command. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that Ukrainian military facilities, assembly workshops for strike drones, and ammunition and weapon depots of the Ukrainian armed forces were hit by precision weapons and drones. And of course, the usual Konashenkov style delivery follows. The objective of the strike was achieved. All designated targets were hit, while in fact, once again, we see that only 20 Shaheds were not shot down out of a record number, and this is a record figure. Just do the math. 500 targets, of which only 20 Shaheds were not shot down. That's less than 5%. So today, the air defense forces demonstrated truly outstanding effectiveness. And overall, this is a result that really deserves special mention. But today, it's not just our air defense forces who are heroes, or Air Force is also heroic, which I'll talk about later after we finish discussing the attacks that took place today. Today, drones attacked a factory in Cheboksary that produces, among other things, antennas for Russian drones called Kometan. By Comet, I mean that's the name of these very antennas. The drones attacked the JSC VNIR, the All-Russian Scientific Research Institute of Relay Engineering in Cheboksary. According to Oleg Nikolaev, the head of Chuvashia, 2 UAVs went down. Well, since they went down, of course, a responsible decision was made to temporarily suspend production. So in the end, they accepted it as a fact and couldn't lie convincingly enough. They admitted that production was ultimately halted. And here we already see the result. Judging by the photos and videos, a major fire broke out at the VNIR facility. This information was spread by several Russian Telegram channels. And by the way, today there's yet another tightening of restrictions. They will be issuing fines, there will be hefty fines, and even jail time for sharing videos of strikes by Ukrainian drones and missiles. It is reported that VNIR is a leading Russian manufacturer of relay protection systems and substations, as well as low, medium, and high voltage electrical equipment. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated that the target of the strike was a subsidiary of JSC VNIR Progress, which manufactures navigation equipment specifically adaptive comet antennas used in Shahed-type attack UAVs, as well as Unified Planning and Correction Modules, UPKM, for guided aerial bombs, KABs, and other high-precision equipment. And we can see that there is no doubt about the fact that the enterprise has been shut down, hit, and this is the main and, in fact, positive result. In addition, today, the armed forces of Ukraine carried out a successful strike on the Savaslika airfield in the Nizhny Novgorod region, where 2 Russian fighter jets were hit. The General Staff noted that MiG-31K fighter jets, which are carriers of Kinjal aeroballistic missiles, regularly take off from this military airfield. In addition to the MiG-31, a Su-34 was also hit. And here is another, let me repeat, excellent piece of news. In response to Ukrainian attacks on Russian airfields, as expected, they have started frantically building shelters and concrete structures at 14 military airfields at once. This was reported by one of the OSINT analysts. The SBU operation, codenamed Web, during which dozens of strategic bombers, Tu-95s and Tu-22s were lost, has led to the fact that starting from the very beginning of June, let me remind you, the attack took place on June honest. A week has already passed, and they have already begun frantically building shelters at 14 airfields. According to OSINT analyst Defmon, who relies on satellite images, construction has begun in Yeisk, Krimsk, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, the Kanskaya airbase in Adygia, Milerovo, Akhtubinsk, Borisogledsk, Kursk, Lipetsk, as well as at the base in Engels. Shelters are also being constructed in the territory of occupied Crimea, specifically in Saki, Sevastopol, Vardeyskoye, and Kirovskoye. Operation Web, which took place on June honest, disabled, according to various estimates, between 10 and 13 Russian strategic aircraft. According to updated information, the security service of Ukraine SBU stated that they managed to disable more than 40 aircraft. That is 34% of Russia's strategic aviation. But the final numbers are still being clarified and have not been calculated as of today. And of course, the main news I announced today is an extremely positive piece of news. A Ukrainian F-16 received from the Dutch government shot down a Russian Su-35. This turned into an air battle, the first of its kind, meaning previously aircraft were shot down exclusively with man-portable air defense systems or surface-to-air missile systems primarily, or they crashed, let's say, due to some technical malfunctions or were hit by FPV drones on the ground, as has happened, or by missile strikes or bomb strikes. But here, this is the first air battle that resulted in the destruction of one of the aircraft. Before this, F-16s did not participate in these duels. Yes, it was aircraft of the Soviet generation, of course, that took part, that is, Ukrainian MiGs and Sukhoi would shoot down Russian ones and vice versa. But now, for the first time, an F-16 has shot down a Russian Su-35. It is reported that this historic victory was achieved over the northeast of Ukraine as part of the defense of the Sumy region. Combat aircraft were used to bomb Russian positions in the territory of the Sumy region and in the neighboring Kursk region. In response, the Russian aerospace forces sent a high-tech fourth-generation Su-35 fighter into battle to shoot down the Ukrainian aircraft. However, he did not know that it was an ambush. A Swedish aircraft of the WAX type sub 340 AEW selected the Su-35 300 kilometers from the border and relayed the exact coordinates to the pilot of the Ukrainian F-16. The Ukrainian pilot, who was not seen by the Russian Su-35, launched an AIM-120 missile, and the Su-35 was hit 16 kilometers from the border on Russian territory. That is, it was struck inside Russian territory, not far from the town of Koronevo in the Kursk region. The pilot ejected. The Ukrainian aircraft returned to their bases as victors without any losses. And here is the reaction of Canadian aviation expert and pilot Mark Brooks. He stated it's not just about the F-16. The real game changer was the Swedish AWACS system, which detects Russian aircraft hundreds of kilometers away and guides F-16 missiles in real time. The Su-35 didn't even know it was being attacked. That's just excellent. It didn't even know it was being attacked. Superb! And finally, the Aviation Channel Air Power writes that if the information is confirmed, this will be the first air battle involving a Ukrainian Viper F-16. The Russian flanker F-30 Su-35 was shot down by the Dutch modified F-16AM, a model that many considered outdated. Well, now this is truly wonderful, absolutely excellent military news. And finally, one more piece of news to wrap things up. The Russian Foreign Ministry has once again come out with yet another brilliant idea, another absurd ultimatum, and of course it was announced by the diplomatic degenerate Sergei Ryabkov, Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation. Coincidentally, he stated that the conflict in Ukraine will not end until NATO leaves. He said this in an interview with TASS. He claimed that the root cause of the conflict was, and I quote, a fundamental contradiction between Russia and NATO on security issues. And without resolving this fundamental problem, which is very real for us, it will simply be impossible to settle the current conflict in the Euro-Atlantic region. In the proposals we addressed to Washington and Brussels, there was an imperative for, listen closely, legally binding and long-term guarantees of non-expansion of the North Atlantic Alliance to the east, as well as demands regarding the deployment of strike weapons near Russian borders. But naturally, as Ryabkov claims, no written guarantees, no imperative of legally binding long-term guarantees were, of course, ever accepted by NATO. These are just more fantasies in the head of Mr. Ryabkov and his boss, Sergei Lavrov. And so, as a result, Russia is now demanding the reduction first, the reduction of the NATO contingent in Eastern Europe, and then its withdrawal altogether. Let me remind you that according to the Russian Foreign Ministry, I'll repeat, this is not my interpretation, since these countries are generally considered in classic European terms to be Central European countries. These are what they call Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, in fact, is Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia itself considers itself part of it. But according to Russia, who exactly is included in Eastern Europe? Well, naturally, that's Poland. And of course, that's the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry's interpretation, the NATO contingent should withdraw from these countries. Why on earth should they leave? What kind of imperatives are there? Let me go back to this again. Imperatives of non-expansion, written commitments not to expand the bloc, and so on and so forth. We can discuss stopping NATO's expansion up to the border. These are the security interests that Mr. Ryabkov wants to see. But what he's more likely to see is not security guarantees, but a three-finger gesture, figuratively speaking, or maybe even a one-finger gesture, the middle one, just so it's clear to him. However, whatever is more comfortable for his Russian soul, whether it's a fig sign or the finger, whichever makes him feel better about the situation. Friends, take care of yourselves. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your opinion on what NATO should actually do and how NATO will respond to the Russian Foreign Ministry's ultimatum. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.